Enjoying a lunch. Before I start off my presentation, I'd like to of course, thank CTI, our group, for giving us this opportunity to launch the partnership. And it is of great privilege that we are actually not just partnering with CTI here in the Philippines, but also in Indonesia. So with this partnership, I believe will bring us great success, especially for a relatively young vendor like Menlo Security. So I'm not going to basically tell you how old I am. I realized that Mr. Siva did that when he started off the presentation. You know, if I tell you, I have to kill you. So no. But I've actually been in security around the same period of time. Always been with security vendors, and of course helping companies to protect not just their assets, but essentially their employees as well. And while we kind of wait for the deck to be put up, I just want to give you a short introduction about myself. My name is Stephanie, based out from Singapore, and my responsibility covers the whole of Asia Pac except Japan. Okay, and Philippines has always been one of my favorite countries. Even in my previous jobs, you know, I've always come out to Philippines at least once every couple of weeks. So maybe we go on to the first slide. So just kind of to set the stage when it comes to cybersecurity. I mean, you probably have heard this from several vendors as well. The reality is that 90% of our threats, in actual fact, comes from two vectors. And these are the two vectors that I bet yourself as a journalist is using it on a day-in, day-out basis, right? Your email and your web. And they have essentially become our business tools as well. I think a couple of months back, certain government in ASEAN actually announced they're going to terminate internet access for all government employees. That created quite a fair bit of hoo-ha. You know, because everybody sees internet as a way of life right now, especially with the new generation of employees. Taking away internet access from them basically is definitely a big deterrent in terms of accepting a role with the company. So with that being said, I think one thing for sure is what we advise most of the enterprises is that you basically take care of both your email and web. I would say you have basically taken care of 90% of your security concerns. And today, you know, I call the World Wide Web the Wild Wild West. It's also W, right? But why is it now more of a Wild Wild West? It's because of the fact that we are seeing more and more of the legit or trusted websites being compromised. But it is not just external factors that is causing us to be a lot more vulnerable. In actual fact, it is actually internal reasons as well, right? And internal reasons actually comes in the form of, for example, outdated applications or not being able to patch your browsers in time. And of course, we all know that anything that is outdated basically have tons of vulnerabilities. And of course, today, we also know that Flash and Java, by and large, by history, even till now, is the most vulnerable applications, okay? And therefore, a lot of security practitioners always ask you to kill Flash. But say easier than done, because once you kill Flash, what happens is that a lot of the websites may not make sense to your users. So every year, Menlo actually does what we call a State of the Web report. So we have this 2 years running. What is interesting is the fact that we actually look at Alexa. Alexa is actually an organization that looks at web browsing habits as well as websites, etc. And we basically comb through the top 1 million websites. And this is actually more on the worldwide report. I have actually one specifically for Philippines. And what is interesting about this report is the fact that today, out of the 1 million websites that is served by everyone in the world, about half of the websites, in fact, are vulnerable. Okay? And why are they vulnerable is also due to the fact that all these websites could actually be hosting vulnerable applications. And what is also interesting is the fact that the category itself, one of the top category is exactly the same industry they are in, news and media. Okay, so what is also interesting is the fact that a lot of the news portals today because of the fact that they actually don't own 100% of the content, bearing in mind a lot of online news portals actually have advertisement ads. All these advertisements ads are actually coming from third-party domains. And all these third-party domains could actually be using very outdated software or applications, and therefore leading your readers to possible vulnerabilities. And today, what we have done as well, especially for this press briefing, in fact, we have actually generated a report for the Philippines market. So what I've asked my corporate to do is, let's look at the top 50 sites in Philippines in the whole of 2016. Some interesting observation, I think good facts to take away from this event, is the fact that the top 50 sites for Filipinos last year are namely social networking, news and media, as well as streaming. Okay, I think all of us are probably visitors of all these websites on a regular basis. And what is also interesting is the fact that 34% of these websites, top 50 websites that Filipinos visit, are actually running very, I would say, risky code in the background. Okay, and like I say, by and large, this number is not alarming. It is pretty consistent regardless of whether you're looking at, Singaporean web browsing habits versus Malaysian. It's pretty much the same. But one of the kind of observation that we have also seen is that, one of the top 50 websites, which I believe is actually a news and media website, when you actually go to the website, in actual fact, it is actually executing dirty scripts itself. And this scripts itself could be coming from numerous domains, in this case, 37 domains. And what is also interesting is that there were actually top 2 adult sites in the top 50. I'll leave that as such, but then, we always also know that dubious website typically holds the most amount of vulnerabilities and therefore malware. But only 2 out of 50. So there were actually 48 websites that were, typically allowed by organization, and they are risky. Okay, I actually have more detailed findings of the report. More than happy to share this with the press. It's just that I will not be able to go through the whole report within 10 minutes. So I will just skip to the next slide.
Stephanie, when you say script, you mean some sort of a
active program.
A program. Okay.
Usually it's more of an active script where this is exactly how malware can be executed, because malware is like water to plant. Without active content, there's no way malware can be executed, because malware is a program. Yeah. Okay, so I would like to also reference back to the Gartner. This is not the MQ, the Magic Quadrant, but what Gartner has done recently is what they call the adaptive security architecture. And what is interesting about this slide is the fact that this gives most of the enterprise organization a more holistic overview of what they should be looking out for in terms of planning their security architecture. And if you can see, this is usually how the flow goes, right? You need to have prevention solution, and then you have the detection, and then you have the ability to respond, and then you have, of course, last but not least, the ability to predict. And of course, right in the circle, this is, I think, Defensor was presenting earlier, which is more on the monitoring piece, right? This will form a very nice holistic overview of what an ideal security posture a company should have, or any organization. But what in reality that we are seeing with a lot of enterprises, because of the limitation of the technology that they have, most of the investment is actually around detection. Okay, and therefore there is always concerns around what we call patient zero, zero-day vulnerability, advanced threats, etc. Okay, and I always joke about the fact, right? How do you know the unknown? Well, if you know the unknown, it shouldn't be called an unknown, right? And this is the biggest challenge, because a lot of the attacks today, in fact, are targeted. And when I say targeted, I don't refer to only one person in the whole organization. I could be referring to one organization or one particular vertical. So, I mean, don't think that targeted is just one person. It is not the case. But because of the fact that if you look at a grand scale of things, is only targeted a certain segment of a vertical or a particular vertical in the industry, it is still considered relatively minute or small. But with such targeted attack, could actually spiral big losses or I would say compromises, data breaches for that organization. And I'm sure in the past couple of years, we have been hearing of cases of CEOs or even top executives being fired because of data compromises or breaches. So today, I always ask, prospects, which role do you want to be right now? Do you think that right now we are the cat or we are the mouse? Any guess?
We have audience.
Yeah, we got a cute one, or the white cute one, okay? But this is not really the ideal situation or role you want to play in the cybersecurity world. But unfortunately, we are still the mouse because we are always waiting for attacks to happen. And many a times, I would say, we are not really truly very prepared yet for attacks, okay? And today, all the technologies out in the market is in this business of selling you tools that analyze whether a traffic is good or bad, whether this is actually a malware or not a malware. So we are always in this whole vicious cycle of trying to determine whether something is good or bad. But how do you win the cyber war in this case? What if this is something that is unknown? How do you know if this unknown is good or bad? There's no way you can actually know because it's unknown. So for Menlo, instead of trying to actually analyze whether something is good or bad, Menlo takes the approach of isolating risky content. And because we know that anything that is active in the case of on the web actually is potentially risky. Like I mentioned much earlier on, a malware can never execute when there is no active content. It would just be a headless program. Okay? So instead of trying to see whether the traffic is good or bad, what Menlo does is we would just assume all risky content or all active content to be risky. And in summary, in terms of how we actually approach the problem, is instead of actually allowing the traffic to come into the network, we actually create what we call a virtual browsing experience. We will actually be kind of executing and fetching the web content on the web on behalf of our customers. And of course, using our technology itself to render back the entire content to the users without them actually ever being exposed to any active content. And the best part about this is the fact that the user can actually still maintain or retain a very native user experience. So no part of their internet surfing is actually being disrupted because no active content is being projected to their computers. So I know that my time is running out pretty fast. So, these are kind of the benefits of using an isolated platform. Instead of trying to isolate yourself from the tool, why not use kind of Menlo Security MSIP to help you to basically continue using the web as a business tool, at the same time not being exposed to all these vulnerabilities that we see on the web. So these are just some of the awards that we have actually garnered in the last couple of years. And of course, we are very fortunate and privileged that because of our innovative technology, we were actually able to expand very rapidly across not just Asia, but of course across the world as well. Okay, so this is actually more of a summary. I won't go too much in depth. I believe you have a copy of my presentation. Unfortunately, because the time is a bit short, typically I like to do a live demo. But in this case, more than happy, we actually have a booth outside. So anytime you want to come over and just see how it works, please feel free to come by. Okay, thank you very much.